At Christmas, my mother-in-law toasted, "I'm proud of all my grandkids except one." Then she pointed at my 9-year-old. People laughed like it was normal. My daughter fought tears. My husband didn't laugh. He set a thick folder on the table. When they opened it, the room went deadly silent. That sentence, except one, didn't just hang in the air. It landed. Right on my kid. Chloe's hand tightened around her fork like she could stab her feelings into obedience. She'd been doing that thing she does when she's trying really, really hard not to cry in front of people. Blinking too much, breathing too shallow, staring at her plate like it might offer a trap door out of the room. I reached for her knee under the table. A small squeeze. Code for, "I'm here. You're not alone." Across from us, my sister-in-law, Brittany, let out a laugh that was careful in the way a person laughs when they know something's cruel but enjoy it anyway. Her 3 kids were not careful. Connor, Brianna, and Haley were like a tiny live studio audience. Connor snorted. Brianna covered her mouth and failed spectacularly. Haley leaned forward like she wanted to see Chloe's face better, like humiliation was a show and she'd paid for good seats. My father-in-law, William, did the thing he always did when Margaret got mean in public. A soft chuckle, eyes down, pretending it was all harmless. A man who could watch a child get singled out and still find the nearest exit ramp into neutrality. Margaret, my mother-in-law, stood there with her champagne glass raised, perfectly pleased with herself. Holiday earrings, red lipstick, that look she wore like a crown. I run this room. And for one awful second, she let the pause stretch before she said, "Except one," like she'd wanted the moment of hope first. Like she'd wanted Chloe to brighten, just a little, so she could crush it properly. Because Chloe had brightened. I saw it. When Margaret started, "I'm proud of all my grandkids." Chloe's shoulders had loosened. Her eyes had lifted. The tiniest smile had tried to exist. For half a heartbeat, my daughter believed she might belong here. Then Margaret took it away. I felt something in my chest go cold. Not hot. Not fiery. Cold. Like a switch flipped. I looked at Andrew. My husband was still. Not calm. Not keeping the peace. Still in the way a body goes still, right before it does something it can't take back. Andrew grew up in this house. He knew the rhythms, the rules, the unspoken hierarchy. Brittany was the golden child, Margaret's favorite, the one who did everything right, the one who got praised for breathing. Andrew was not that. And Chloe, sweetly, stubbornly, inconveniently, looked like him. Andrew didn't say a word. He didn't do that polite half-smile he used when Margaret threw little verbal darts. He didn't do the, "let's talk about this later" voice that always meant, "let's swallow it now." He just reached down, pulled a thick folder out from his bag, placed it on the table in front of Margaret like he was setting down something heavy enough to dent wood. A couple of relatives, because yes, this wasn't just us, shifted in their seats. Aunt Denise stopped chewing. Cousin Mark raised his eyebrows like, "Oh boy." Someone made a little nervous "what's that" sound, as if a folder was a wild animal that might bite. Andrew's voice was quiet, polite even, like he was about to read a Christmas card. "Since we're being honest tonight," he said, "I'd like to read something." Margaret's smile flickered. Brittany's laugh got stuck in her throat and came out smaller. William finally looked up. "What is this?" Margaret asked, still smiling, still trying to keep control. Her tone said she expected Andrew to fold. "Apologize. Get back in line." Andrew didn't answer. He slid the folder closer. Margaret, for one proud, stupid second, looked like she thought it might be something sentimental. A tribute. A letter. A family speech. Then Brittany reached over, too fast, too familiar, and flipped it open like she owned everything on that table. The first page flashed. I didn't see the words. Not really. Just blocks of text. Highlighting. A line of numbers. Brittany's face changed anyway. It wasn't dramatic. No gasp. No scream. Just the color draining out of her like somebody pulled a plug. Connor's grin died. Brianna stopped mid-laugh. Haley's mouth fell open just a little, like her brain couldn't decide whether to keep being mean or start being scared. Margaret leaned forward. William's hand froze on his glass. For a moment, the room was so quiet I could hear the heating vent click. Margaret's eyes moved across the page. Her lips parted. Her smile broke. Not like a crack, like a snap. And then she looked up at Andrew with a kind of panic she'd never allowed herself to show in front of family. "What is this?" she said again, but this time it wasn't a question. It was a warning. Andrew's face didn't change. He looked down at the folder, then up at Margaret, and the way he said, "I'm going to read it," was so calm it made my skin prickle. That was the moment the room stopped being Christmas dinner and started being something else entirely, something with consequences. And Chloe, my sweet, brave kid, lifted her eyes from her plate and looked at her dad like she could feel the power shifting even if she didn't understand why. If you're picturing this as a sudden explosion out of nowhere, I wish. The truth is, the fuse had been burning for years. It just burned quietly, like those cheap candles that look festive and smell like warm vanilla family trauma. At first, it wasn't dramatic. It was deniable. The kind of thing that makes you feel crazy because you can't quote it cleanly. Margaret didn't say, "I hate your daughter." She said things like, "She's sensitive," with a polite little sigh, like Chloe was a difficult appliance. She didn't say, "I don't care about Chloe." She forgot Chloe's preferences, forgot her allergies, forgot her birthday gift until 2 days later, and acted like she'd done Chloe a favor by remembering at all. Meanwhile, Brittany's kids were praised for everything. Connor burped. "Boys will be boys." Brianna rolled her eyes at an adult. "She's confident." Haley snatched a cookie out of Chloe's hand. "She's spirited." Chloe asked for a glass of water and said, "Please." Margaret looked at her like she'd asked for a loan. Andrew saw it. Of course he did. But he'd been trained to absorb Margaret, to keep things smooth, to be the one who didn't rock the boat. And if you've never lived inside a family like that, here's the secret. The boat is already rocking. They just want you to be the one who pretends it isn't. Andrew also helped them. Financially. Not once. Not twice. For years. At first it was small. A utility bill just until Friday. A car repair because we're strapped this month. Then it got bigger. A temporary loan that became a permanent expectation. A medical copay. A new appliance. Brittany's short-term daycare situation. Connor's soccer fees. Brianna's dance costumes. Haley's school trip. On and on. Andrew is a software guy. Good job, steady income, the kind of career that makes people in Margaret's generation nod like it proves you're a proper adult. So Margaret treated him like a wallet with a pulse. And Andrew paid. Because he kept thinking, if I'm useful, they'll be kinder. If I'm generous, they'll stop calling me difficult. If I just do enough, it'll feel like love. It never did. I'm a lawyer, not the dramatic courtroom kind, the boring contracts and paper kind, the kind where you learn that people hide things in plain sight because most of us don't read past the first paragraph. So when Andrew started quietly mentioning the money, how often, how much, I did what I always do. I asked questions. Not accusatory. Practical. Do you have the receipts? Is it written down? Is it always you? Do they ever pay you back? Andrew would shrug and say, "It's family." That phrase is a magic spell. It makes adults hand over money and swallow pain like it's medicine. Then Josephine died. Josephine was Andrew's grandmother. Margaret's mother. The person Margaret liked to reference when it made her look good. Josephine would never approve of that. Josephine believed in family. But Josephine, when she was alive, had been kinder to Andrew than Margaret ever was. Josephine saw him. She didn't need him to be Brittany to count as valuable. And Josephine adored Chloe. Chloe used to sit on Josephine's couch with a book while Josephine hummed and knit and pretended she wasn't watching Chloe like she was something precious. Josephine called her my little bright thing. She asked Chloe questions and listened to the answers. Radical behavior, really. When Josephine passed, there were the usual family murmurs about the estate and what's left. Margaret did the talking. She always did. "There isn't much," Margaret said. "It was all medical expenses. You know how it is." Brittany nodded like she'd already moved on. William made a sympathetic noise. Everyone acted like that was the end of the conversation. Andrew didn't fight it. Not then. But afterward, little things didn't add up. A comment. A slip. Margaret getting weirdly defensive when Andrew asked a simple question. Brittany answering too fast with, "It's handled," like the conversation itself was the problem. And the requests for money didn't vanish. But they changed. They came less often, spaced out, dressed up as casual. Like someone trying to look normal after they'd already moved something heavy behind the curtain. What did get bolder wasn't the asking. It was the attitude. The warmth went thin. The jokes got sharper. And Chloe stopped being quietly ignored and started being noticed, in that deliberate way that makes a child feel like she's doing something wrong just by sitting at the table. Josephine's death didn't make them careful. It made them confident, like they thought whatever they'd handled was locked away for good, and now they could say the quiet parts out loud. Andrew didn't accuse them. Not at first. He just started looking, quietly, without drama, the way a person does when they don't want to believe what they might find. I helped with the boring parts, organizing what we already had. Transfer histories, old texts, emails, every "can you help us just this once?" that had apparently happened 19 times. We didn't have some secret detective board with red string. We had a kitchen table and a laptop and a growing sense of dread. At some point, Andrew came home with a look on his face I didn't recognize. Not anger, recognition. Like he'd finally found the piece of the puzzle that made everything else click into place, and he wished he hadn't. He didn't tell me everything at once. He didn't even want to say it out loud. He just said, "They lied." I asked, "About what?" Andrew swallowed. "Josephine." That was it. That was all he could manage in that moment. And because I'm me, I didn't push for a full explanation. I asked, "Do you have proof?" Andrew didn't answer right away. He just looked past me like his brain was trying to catch up to what his gut already knew. "Not yet," he said finally. "But I can get it." Then he did something that, in our marriage, is basically his version of panicking. He got quiet and methodical. For the next couple of weeks, Andrew spent more time in his home office than he ever had. Not playing games, not doom scrolling, working, printing, highlighting, making calls he didn't tell me about until after they happened. The kind of calls where you come back looking like you just walked out of a room with fluorescent lighting and bad news. I didn't nag him. I didn't hover. I didn't say, "You need to confront them right now," because that's how you end up being blamed for everything. Instead, I did the only thing I could do. I made sure Chloe felt normal. I packed lunches. I asked about school. I kept the world steady while Andrew quietly pulled at threads. One night, he came out of his office holding a folder. Not thick yet, not dramatic, just heavy in his hands, like it already weighed more than paper should. "Kate," he said. My name came out careful. I followed him to the kitchen table. He set the folder down and opened it, then slid it toward me like he couldn't bear to hold it alone. I flipped the first page. I saw Chloe's name, not scribbled, not maybe, printed, clean, official. I turned another page, and another, numbers, dates, transfers, notes in that sterile transactional language that banks use when they want you to forget the money is real. I don't want to get dramatic here, but my stomach honestly dropped like I'd missed a step on the stairs. "This is a lot," I said, because my brain didn't have a better sentence ready. Andrew nodded once, jaw tight. "It's hers," he said, and the way he said hers made my throat go dry. I looked at him. "They knew?" Andrew didn't answer out loud. He didn't have to. He just reached over and tapped one line on the page with his finger, a small gesture that somehow made it worse. Like the paper itself was raising its hand and saying, yes. I sat back, staring at the kitchen light reflecting off the page, and felt that cold switch flip again. That night, I looked at Andrew and said, "This is your family. I'm not going to tell you what to do." Because it was true. It had to be his choice. If I pushed, Margaret would blame me for turning him against them. The villain role would be handed to me like a gift I didn't want. But I did say one thing. "Whatever you decide," I told him, "we protect Chloe first." Andrew nodded again, this time bigger, harder. And then weeks passed. The folder stayed closed. Because paper is one thing. Using it against the people who raised you, even if they didn't raise you kindly, is another. Until Christmas. Until Margaret raised her glass. Until Chloe had that tiny flicker of hope. Until Margaret crushed it. And Andrew finally chose action over peace. Back at the table, Margaret tried to regain control with the only tool she had, performance. She laughed, bright, fake. "Andrew," she said, like she was indulging a child. "Put that away. Don't do this in front of everyone." Andrew looked around the table, at the cousins and aunts, and the people who'd been laughing at Chloe 2 minutes ago. "That's the point," he said. His voice stayed calm. His hands didn't shake. He didn't look like a man having a tantrum. He looked like a man reading a weather report that happened to involve a storm. "I'm going to read a few things," he said, and then he looked at Margaret directly. "And then we're leaving." Brittany opened her mouth, then closed it. William cleared his throat. Margaret's eyes darted, calculating. Andrew began at the top of the page. He didn't start with Josephine. He didn't start with whatever had turned Brittany and Margaret pale. He started with what everyone already knew in theory, but no one liked hearing out loud. Money. "June 12th, Andrew read. $1,200. Car repair. Sent to Mom." He looked up. "Margaret." Margaret flinched at her own name like it was a slap. Andrew kept going. "August 3rd, he said. $800. Back rent. Sent to Brittany." Brittany's smile twitched. "October 18th, Andrew said. $450. School trip." He didn't narrate feelings. He didn't add insults. He just read. Numbers, dates, notes, totals. It was uncomfortable. But not shocking. Not yet. People shifted in their chairs. A couple relatives stared at their plates. Connor looked confused, like he'd expected a fun fight, not math. And I could feel it. The wave of relief from Margaret and Brittany. Like, oh, it's just this. It's just him being dramatic about helping. Fine. We can shame him for embarrassing us and then we'll move on. Margaret tried to lean into that. "This is ridiculous," she said sharply. "You chose to help." Andrew didn't look up from the page. "Mm-hmm," he said, like he was agreeing with someone about the time. "Total, over 4 years, 48,600 and..." Brittany cut in. Stop. Andrew, that's not... Andrew lifted a hand, not aggressive, just final. No, he said. You don't get to interrupt now. Brittany went still. William's face had gone blotchy. He kept glancing around at the guests, like he could still salvage his reputation if he left the room fast enough. Margaret's lips tightened. This is a family dinner, she hissed. Andrew finally looked up. His eyes were flat. No, he said. This is a performance you've been running for years, and Chloe just got cast as tonight's punchline. Chloe's head snapped up at her name. Andrew softened, just a fraction, when he looked at her. Then he looked back down, turned the page, and the air in the room changed. It was subtle. The way a room changes when a joke stops being funny, when people realize they're standing too close to something dangerous. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Josephine left a trust, he said, calm as ice. For Chloe. She was the only beneficiary. Margaret made a small, broken sound. No. And you two, Andrew added, eyes on the paper, were the trustees, meaning it wasn't yours. It was hers. The room went quiet in the way it does when everyone understands the same thing at once. Andrew read 2 lines. Just 2. 7,500. Labeled Home Improvement, paid from Chloe's trust. Brittany went rigid. 4,200. Credit card. Same account. Andrew didn't even look up when he said it. This isn't a misunderstanding, he said. It's documented. My stomach turned cold again because I understood what he was doing. He was letting everyone in the room realize at the same time that this wasn't about family drama. It was about something they couldn't hand-wave away with a sigh and a guilt trip. Margaret leaned forward, voice sharp. Andrew, stop, right now. Andrew didn't stop. Brittany tried a different tactic, softer. Okay. This isn't what it looks like. Andrew glanced up. What does it look like, Brittany? Brittany's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Because the problem with documented truth is that it doesn't care about your tone. Margaret's eyes went wild for a second. She reached toward the folder. Andrew slid it back. Calm. Controlled. Protective. Don't touch it, he said. The entire table froze. Not just because Andrew had said don't to Margaret in her own house, but because Margaret listened. She didn't sit back like a queen anymore. She sat back like someone who realized the crown could be taken. Andrew finished the page, read one more line, one more number, and then he closed the folder. That sound, the folder snapping shut, felt like a door slamming. Andrew stood. We're leaving, he said. Margaret's voice went thin. If you walk out that door... Andrew cut her off, still calm. You don't get access to her again. He nodded toward Chloe. Chloe stared at him, eyes wide, as if she'd never seen an adult do something so clear on her behalf. I reached for Chloe's hand. Andrew took her other one. We stood. And this is the part people don't talk about. Leaving isn't dramatic the way yelling is dramatic. Leaving is quiet. Leaving is you pushing your chair back while the room watches. Leaving is you walking past Christmas decorations that suddenly look cheap and fake. We made it to the front door before Margaret found her voice again. This is because of her, Margaret snapped, and she didn't mean Josephine. She didn't mean money. She meant me. Kate has poisoned you. Andrew didn't even turn around. Outside, the cold hit my face like a reset button. Chloe took one shaky breath, then another, like she'd been holding it all night and only now remembered she was allowed to inhale. In the car, she finally whispered, Daddy, did I do something wrong? Andrew's hands tightened on the wheel. No, he said. One word. Absolute. You didn't. And I watched my daughter's face loosen like something inside her unclenched. Then Andrew's phone lit up. Margaret. Then William. Then Brittany. Call after call after call. Andrew didn't answer at first. He drove, jaw tight, eyes forward. The snow made the streetlights look blurry, like the whole world was trying to soften what had just happened. Then the fourth call came through. Andrew hit speaker. Margaret's voice exploded into the car. What do you think you're doing? Andrew didn't raise his voice. Going home. You humiliated me, Margaret hissed. You humiliated Chloe, Andrew said. That's not the same thing, Margaret snapped, and there it was, the whole belief system in one sentence. Brittany cut in, shrill. You can't just accuse us in front of everyone. Andrew's voice stayed even. Then you shouldn't have done what you did. William's voice came on next, too calm, too practiced. Son, be reasonable. Don't bring lawyers into this. We're family. Andrew laughed once. Not happy, just tired. I'm done with family as an excuse, he said. Margaret's voice shifted, softer, suddenly sweet. Andrew, please, think about Chloe. Do you want to put her through all this? Andrew's grip tightened on the wheel. I'm thinking about Chloe, he said. That's why this is happening. There was a beat of silence. Then Margaret's tone turned sharp again. If you do this, you will destroy us. Andrew's voice didn't change. You did that. He ended the call, and in the quiet that followed, Andrew said something I'd never heard him say about his mother. From now on, he said, no more phone fights, no more meetings, no more talking it out. He looked at me for half a second, eyes hard. It goes formal. I nodded, and Chloe, from the back seat, whispered, Does that mean we don't have to go there anymore? Andrew swallowed. Yes, he said. It does. The next morning, my phone looked like a Christmas tree. Missed calls, voicemails, texts, messages from relatives who hadn't spoken to Andrew in months, but had suddenly found religion in the Church of Family Harmony. The first wave was guilt. How could you do that to your mother? She's heartbroken. It was just a toast. Chloe needs her grandparents. Then the second wave. Anger. You're making serious accusations. You embarrassed us. You're tearing the family apart. And of course, the third wave. Blame. It wasn't Margaret was cruel. It wasn't Brittany laughed. It was Kate is controlling. Kate is turning Andrew against his family. Kate is using Chloe as a weapon. I'm a lawyer. I've seen people rewrite reality with alarming confidence, but watching a family do it in real time is something else. It's like watching a group chat become a courtroom where the loudest person is judge and jury. Andrew didn't respond. He didn't defend himself in paragraphs. He didn't send screenshots. He didn't argue. He just stopped engaging. And that, apparently, was intolerable. Brittany tried to get clever. She sent an email titled, Private Resolution. Inside was a neat little offer. A number that sounded big until you realized what it would actually mean spread over years of stolen future. Attached was the part that made Andrew go very still. An NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, a legal muzzle wrapped in polite words. I just want to move forward, Brittany wrote. For Chloe's sake. I stared at the screen and let out a laugh that surprised even me. For Chloe's sake, I said out loud. They're really going to use her name like a shield. Andrew read it once, then again. Then he handed me the phone without speaking. I didn't need to be in their legal lane to understand what they were doing. They weren't offering peace. They were offering a payoff for silence. Andrew's reply was one sentence. No! Then he forwarded the email to the attorney we hired, Ms. Lawson. Ms. Lawson was calm in the way you want a person to be when your life is on fire. She didn't gasp. She didn't make it dramatic. She just asked for documents and timelines and said things like accounting and trustee duties in plain English. "Here's what matters," she told us. "This isn't about family feelings. It's about money held for a child. And the question is simple. Where did it go?" That was the only legal framing we needed. Margaret and Brittany tried pressure next. Aunt Denise called me just to talk, which is always a lie. "Kate," she said, voice syrupy, "you have to understand. Margaret is old-fashioned." "Margaret is 58, I wanted to say, not 82. Instead I said, "This isn't about old-fashioned. This is about Chloe." A pause. Then the real reason slid out. "But do you really want to do this?" Aunt Denise whispered. "To family?" I looked at Chloe coloring at the kitchen table, tongue sticking out in concentration, trying to rebuild her sense of safety one crayon stroke at a time. "They already did it to Chloe," I said. "We're just not pretending anymore." Margaret's messages changed tone as soon as she realized guilt wasn't working. First she begged, then she threatened, then she begged again, then she tried concern. "I'm worried about Andrew," she texted. "This isn't like him." It was like him. He'd just finally stopped aiming it inward. The smear campaign didn't go public. It went family public. Group chats, church friends, neighborhood whispers, the kind of reputation warfare that doesn't leave fingerprints. But the thing about documentation is that it doesn't care who whispers. Ms. Lawson sent a formal letter requesting an accounting and repayment. It wasn't written like a movie villain. It was written like a professional who knows what happens next if you ignore it. Margaret's response, through her own lawyer, was exactly what you'd expect from people who'd been caught and still wanted control. They claimed misunderstanding. They claimed best interest. They claimed they'd been managing the funds. They offered a new settlement, higher than the first, still insulting, with a new NDA. Andrew didn't blink. "No," he said again. Then the hearing date came. Weeks later, not overnight justice, real-life timing, long enough for the stress to sit in your body like a weight. Chloe had nightmares. Not every night, but enough. She asked if Grandma Margaret hated her. She asked if her cousins were right. She asked if being the accept one meant something was wrong with her. Andrew answered every time. "There is nothing wrong with you," he said. "There is something wrong with them." Court was not dramatic the way TV makes it dramatic. No surprise witnesses. No gasps. Mostly paperwork and adults trying to sound reasonable. But there was one moment that felt like oxygen. Ms. Lawson laid out the numbers and the paper trail in a way that was impossible to talk around. She didn't insult Margaret. She didn't rant about family cruelty. She simply showed what money existed, what it was meant for, and what happened to it. The judge didn't look impressed. Margaret sat very straight, chin up, the way she always did when she wanted to look innocent. Brittany stared at the table like it could swallow her whole. William looked older than I'd ever seen him, smaller. And then, cleanly, the ruling landed. Repayment ordered. Accounting required. Chloe's funds restored. Not a speech. Not a moral lesson. A consequence. Outside the courtroom, Margaret tried one last pivot. It was almost impressive, the way she could lose and still reach for control. "Andrew," she said, voice trembling now, a performance of pain. "We're still family." Brittany stepped forward too, eyes wet. "Can't we just move on?" William did the quiet man thing again, like he could erase what happened by sounding gentle. "You've made your point." Andrew stared at them, and for a second I saw grief on his face. Real grief. Not for what they were, for what he'd wanted them to be. Then his expression hardened. "You don't get to humiliate my child." he said. "Take from her, and then ask for peace when you're caught." Margaret flinched like he'd hit her. Andrew didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He didn't gloat. He just said the line that mattered. "We're done." Brittany made a strangled sound. Margaret's face crumpled. William looked away. Andrew took my hand. Then he held Chloe's hand in his other, and we walked away from them. Not as a dramatic exit scene, as a decision. Josephine left $250,000 in a trust for Chloe. Chloe was the only beneficiary. Margaret and William were the trustees. By the time we found it, only $78,400 was still there. The rest, $171,600, was gone. Not spent on Chloe, spent on family expenses, credit cards, and repairs that magically never involved the child whose name was on the trust. The judge ordered them to repay the $171,600 plus interest and attorney's fees. By the time everything was finalized, the number they owed landed just under $200,000. They didn't have it. So they did what people do when consequences finally show up with a due date. They started selling things. Brittany's shiny SUV disappeared first. Margaret and William took out a loan against their house. Nobody called it stealing anymore. They called it stress and hard times. I called it repayment. Chloe's trust was restored. Fully. Quietly. A balance on a screen that finally looked like a future again. And then we went no contact for real. Not taking space. Not we'll see. No calls, no visits, no surprise drop-ins, no holidays spent bracing for the next joke. Anything that mattered went through Ms. Lawson. Everything else was silence. Later that year, a Christmas card showed up anyway. Margaret's handwriting, cheerful like nothing had happened. Andrew didn't open it. He tossed it straight into the trash. Chloe saw him do it. She watched for a second, then asked, small and careful, "Is Grandma Margaret still mad at me?" Andrew didn't hesitate. "Chloe," he said gently, "Grandma Margaret is mean." No rage. No speech. Just the truth, finally said like it wasn't Chloe's job to fix. Chloe blinked, thought about it, and nodded like something clicked into place. "Oh," she said. "Okay." And that was the moment I didn't know I'd been waiting for, the moment my daughter stopped treating herself like the problem. So what do you think? Did we go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe if you want more stories like this.